Welcome,
Thank you,
Ira.
Jan.
Stage is yours.
All right.
Try the Swedish one now. Try the Swedish, please.
Oh, I don't know if I can actually pronounce this, but thank you, Google Translate. I really am excited to be here. I'm trying to get the energy up, the after-lunch crowd, probably digesting still. My name is Narges. Jan got it right. Very few people pronounce both my first and my last names correctly, and never both at the same time. I do have a Twitter handle. I don't use it very much, but do with it what you will. So, Jan mentioned I work here. That is Pier 1, Bay 2. That's the view I see when I go to work every day at Adaptive Path. I've worked there for just over 2 years now. It's been a really interesting journey for me because my background is actually in traditional graphic design and art direction, and I was certainly aware of user experience and had worked on digital things, but I went from being sort of on the periphery of all that to really kind of at the epicenter, and it's been kind of weird at times. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about specific client work because I signed a bunch of NDAs and I'm afraid of lawyers. So why beauty? I knew that word was going to be a little bit provocative, but I didn't realize just how provocative it was until yesterday. We had a little press availability in the afternoon with some of the speakers, and we had a pretty rousing discussion that was mostly around the word beauty, which really seemed to get people going. I did intend that. The last couple of years at Adaptive Path, I've gone from a more maker-focused environment to a very cerebral environment. It's not that Adaptive Path doesn't include making skills, but boy, there's some brainy people very much on the strategic end of things, and sometimes they lose sight of the value of the tangible aspects of design. More than that, I've had a lot of exposure to really the UX and experience design worlds altogether, and I know that in a more sort of technology-driven space, there's kind of some fear and suspicion towards the creative types, the people in the panda hats. They're definitely not on top in the UX hierarchy, but I think beauty is really important. It's something that humans fundamentally crave and seek, whether they make it or just want to experience it. It's very much part of the human condition, and we are human-centered designers. So I'm going to define beauty for the sake of today as sensory pleasure plus meaning. And I'm going to talk about beauty and design. So my personal definition of design is beauty plus usefulness. As a designer, I aspire to make things that are useful and beautiful. So remember that beauty encompasses an element of meaning. In the context of design, that meaning comes in to the usefulness part. So what is the context of the thing you're making? Design exists in service. You're making a tool, you're solving a problem. You might be making a chair for someone to sit in. The meaning in the beauty, in the design, really comes with the context of the sitting in the chair. So another way to talk about usefulness and beauty is form and function. These words are very familiar to designers. This is a lovely quote from Frank Lloyd Wright. And this is basically the guiding spirit of modern design and has been for the last 100 years. I like to talk about useful and beautiful because they're even more, to me, plain-spoken and clear. And sometimes we hear the words form and function so many times that they kind of lose their meaning. But this is basically what I aspire to as a designer. And when I encounter an object that really perfectly combines those things, it makes me very happy. This is my favorite coffee cup on my table at home in my kitchen. If this cup is clean, it's always the first one I reach for in the morning to make my coffee. So I now make my coffee in this espresso machine, And I have other cups that sort of fit under the spout, but my excuse for buying this rather expensive cup from Heath Ceramics in San Francisco was, oh, it fits under the spout really well, and it's about the right size. My Americano will come out the right strength. Really, I just sort of lust after Heath Ceramics, but I needed a more utility-driven excuse to buy it. I liked it so much. I bought 5 of them, and because I get bored easily, I wanted to have a range of colors. But there's something about that cup, even though it's not my favorite color, for some reason, in the context of this cup, the texture of that particular glaze, the subtlety, you can't really tell in this photo, but there's just a subtle tonal shift between the inside and the outside. It pleases me more than anything else that I could possibly drink coffee out of in my house. And so, in the economy of Heath cups in my house, this is the winner. So, businesses have known about creating desire for consumer goods for a really long time. It's not a new concept. But in the context of experience design, there's just a swell of desire for design, and a lot of companies that have at their heart a technical element or are using a lot of technology are now talking about being design-led in their technology. And they're also talking a lot about customer experience. So, really good indicator of where sort of the business zeitgeist is on this. This is from the Harvard Business Review. Well, it was published in the Harvard Business Review. It's actually from the Design Management Institute and Motive Strategies. This is the D index. Anybody here heard of this? Okay. This is an imaginary stock index made up of 15 companies that were judged by the people that put this together to be design-led. Not surprising to see Apple on this list. I don't know what that 228% increase over the S&P 500 would look like without Apple, but the point here is that this was published in the Harvard Business Review, and basically smart business people are embracing design in a way that they never have before. So another trend, this is PricewaterhouseCoopers. This is a management consulting company. They have an experience radar. So the idea of experiences, HBR again, this is something that a lot of businesses have decided is really important. They're taking a look at the rapid pace of change. They're taking a look at disruptive technologies and services that are built around technology that have disrupted spaces, like the way that Uber has disrupted the taxi industry, the way that Airbnb has disrupted the hotel industry. And they're thinking, how do we hold on to our customers? So the answer for a lot of businesses is to try and create experiences so that they can more deeply connect with their customers. I've actually heard businesses literally say, we want our customers to love doing business with us. If there's one word that you don't hear in business, well, beauty is one of those words. Love is another one. So things are kind of changing. So what business wants from design is what experience design is really good at, which is coming up with insights into the deep needs of people, their putative customers, through research and designing things, even inventing new things to serve those needs. And they want to connect with people on a more profound level through building experiences. So, experience. It's incredibly personal. It's incredibly subjective. You can't actually design an experience. I work for an experience design firm, so we talk about experience design all the time, but sometimes we take a step back and we remind ourselves that we can't actually design the experience because that experience resides within the person who's actually having it. And all we can do is design the conditions for experience. So personal, subjective, sensory, it's a lot like beauty. Beauty starts with sensory pleasure. In fact, everything we perceive and experience passes through our senses. These senses are the gateways to our minds. The mind itself is a bit of an abstract construct. I think of myself as having a mind, but really what I have is a brain, and it lives in my head, which is attached to my body. So as mediated as some of the sensory experiences we have with digital technology can be, they're all physical. I'm using my eyes, my nerves are sending little electrical impulses, and depending on what my reaction, I might have a whole other set of physical reactions to what I'm seeing or learning. If I get upset, I might have a headache and a stomach ache before I'm done with a digital experience. So that thing about the gates of the senses, that's something I've been turning over in my mind for a while. But I wasn't sure if you guys were just going to take my word for it. So I went and I did some digging. And it turns out that they've actually done, science, them. There has been research done on perceptions of beauty, oddly enough. And it happens very, very fast. And when I say fast, as little as a 20th of a second. So, how many of you have heard of Donald Norman? He wrote the Design of Everyday Things. Yeah. He also wrote a book called Emotional Design in 2004, where he and some other researchers were looking at aesthetics in human-computer interaction. So he participated in running this experiment where they put two different ATM interface designs in front of research subjects. They were functionally identical, according to the way that he described the experiment. The usability should have been identical, but one of them was more beautiful, and more importantly, was perceived to be more beautiful by the subjects. And interestingly enough, the research participants also rated those designs to be more usable. They were so perplexed by these results because, according to what they knew about these designs, the usability should have been the same. They ran it again in another country, and they got the same results. So out of those results, he started looking into different levels of processing in the brain. And basically, your sensory systems send information very rapidly to a very old part of our brain. I'm not sure if this is the lizard brain. It could be the lizard brain. It completely bypass, some of the more complex cognitive processes. But even though these things happen very, very rapidly, they instantly start to change the emotions and perceptions. So they really set the stage for the experience. And they it's almost like throwing a ball and having it bounce off of something, or playing pool. Like it'll deform the trajectory of everything that happens after that. So we have this abstract construct of the mind. In our abstract construct, we separate thinking and feeling. But in our lived experience, they're completely intertwined. You really can't separate them, and you can't ever take out the emotions and the instinctual responses from the human cognitive experience. Importantly, for design, we often abstract apart these ideas of function and form. And it's very useful to do so. It's very useful when you're analyzing something or when you're planning something to address these things separately. But in design, you have to move towards a tangible result. And as good designers, our craft tells us that we want those things to be seamlessly intertwined. But also, the lived experience of those things is always going to be intertwined, whether we've done a good job or a bad job. And these things tend to stand or fail together. So, as useful as it may be to separate these ideas, it's dangerous not to recombine them at some point, because then you really lose touch with the actual experience. So, experiences are physical. If you're doing human-centered design, and really all design is human-centered, we're all designing for people, or we should be, you have to address the senses. So, if we're in a world where more and more value is being placed on experiences and good experiences, and experiences are sensory, then I think it's obvious that we should be making more beautiful experiences. And that brings us to the question of who exactly is going to do that, and how are they going to work together to get it done. So this is a way to describe the end-to-end design process that I've seen a lot at Adaptive Path. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of sort of front-end strategy and research happening at Adaptive Path, although there's some making and execution as well. There are a lot of different people in this process, or at least there are a lot of different skills. And I've never met anybody who could do all of this really well. So one thing that's been kind of interesting to me about being in the experience design world is talking to people who have designer in their title who don't really seem to understand what I do or how I do it. I think to create great experiences, you need to get this whole thing right. I think that it is still much more common for the second diamond, the execution diamond, to be done in haste without a thorough and rigorous process of discovery and strategy. But I think the better you get the entire process, the better the end result will be. So, all that work, all that planning, all that research, it culminates in an experience which might be judged in a 20th of a second. One thing that's interesting to me about this diagram is it actually encapsulates really well the process that I always used as a graphic designer doing graphic design. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about working at Adaptive Path is we are organized typically in small cross-functional teams where people with different capabilities get to work on an entire project together from start to finish. So I think there's a lot of strength in not segregating people by phase. I think if you take a designer who specializes in doing the more hands-on, tangible craft and assume that they don't have something to add earlier, I think you're making a big mistake. Oh. Oops. So I guess one way to put it is, the tangible form of the design. And in the UX world, the people who make that tangible form are often visual designers together with front-end developers. They shouldn't be thought of as just adding the glaze. And those of you who are visual designers out there, you shouldn't think of yourself as adding just the glaze. In a rigorous design process, you should be making the whole cup. So, human-centered design. We can't do it if we're not doing it in a human way and respecting some of our human virtues. So, especially when we talk about something like experience, which is so fundamentally subjective, we can't be afraid of the subjectivity and the creativity in the design process. Everything goes through the senses.
I tell you what, Iran. Don Norman, he was a speaker at From Business to Buttons.
I
some
wish I'd
years
been
ago.
there.
I don't even remember which year. Can you tell, Johan? Was it 2009? Or? Yeah, and he made great success, of course, I guess. So, some of us here, we know his message very well. I wonder, you've been a freelancer for quite a while as a designer, have you?
I've done freelance, yep.
And you have also worked in many different sectors. Now, since a couple of years, you work for Adaptive Path. What's it like? It's an interesting company.
It is a very interesting company.
Even if you can't talk about the customers, I mean, just tell us a little. What's it like to work with Adaptive Path? We had Chris Riston here last year.
Well, it's one of my favorite things about it is one of the things that I mentioned, that we work in cross-functional teams. We have dedicated project rooms, so in order to do any kind of design work really well, whether it's on the more strategic end or on the more creative, tangible end, dedicated time and space are really important. So it's wonderful to have. It's almost a luxury in today's world to be able to work on one thing. You go in a room with your small team, you work closely together. I've learned a tremendous amount that way because from day one, I was participating in things that I had never done before, and I learned a lot. So, yeah.
Talk about them a little more. Were they aware enough about the importance of beauty before you came?
Some people are very aware of that. Not everyone is. I think that there's a natural tendency to sort of value what you know and what you do. And there are people at Adaptive Path with all kinds of different backgrounds, and some of them have not done the tangible end of design so much. So they don't really understand the process, and they're not close to the details.
That's one thing I don't understand about you. You know what?
What's that?
That is that how can you use your ability to bind your own books when you work at Adaptive Path?
I don't think I've ever bound a book at work, but I have actually worked on books that we have made. And another thing that I like about Adaptive Path is there's enough room that if I decide, hey, I want to make a book, I can usually find a way to make it happen. So,
good to know. Annika, do you have anything?
Yes.
Yep.
What would you say to startups who've been successful despite ignoring beauty?
I would say to be more successful, they should stop ignoring beauty.
Easy one-liner. Very good. Thank you very much, Iran Narges. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to try to unplug this?